Our final demo today is demand-side energy management. Lower energy costs, earn revenue, promote grid reliability, and achieve sustainability goals with Cpower Energy Management. Joe Stickley of Cpower will deliver this information. So Joe, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Lori. And I appreciate it. I didn't realize I was actually wearing the same outfit today that I'm wearing in my picture. So good timing there. The real trick will be keeping the dogs quiet for 15 minutes while we're getting all of the UPS packages during the holidays here. So fingers crossed with that. As Lori mentioned, I am Joe Stickney. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development here at Cpower. And today we're going to be talking about demand-side energy management and how it helps support grid reliability and offers you many opportunities to earn revenue and reduce your energy costs. To entice you to stick around for the last session, we have a free gift to help you manage your energy and gain some insights from our team of experts at the conclusion of the call. So why don't we quickly start with just an overview of who Cpower is and what we do. And sorry, just get my slides under control here. So Cpower is one of the largest providers of demand response services in the United States. We have 1,500 customers at about 13,000 different sites, and we have 4,000 megawatts under management, and earn a little more than 1,000 of those megawatts coming purely from distributed generation assets that we have enrolled in the energy markets. We offer 60 plus demand-side energy management programs in the wholesale energy markets, the independent system operator or ISO, and regulated and deregulated utility areas. So really, to summarize what we do, Cpower helps our customers earn revenue, save on energy costs, support grid reliability, and achieve sustainability goals. And we've been doing demand-side management for a little over 30 years now. So when we talk about our markets, we serve nearly all of the major independent system operators or ISOs in the US. These can be seen on the left, and they include PJM, ERCOT, NYISO, ISO New England, and CAISO or CAISO, depending on what part of the country you reside in. And this also includes the deregulated utilities that reside within those areas highlighted on the map as well. And then on the right, you can see our regulated utilities, which include APS, Evergy, Montana, Dakota, CPS, Encore, and CenterPoint, which all have programs that Cpower services. And the key takeaway here is that if you have a facility in one or more of these areas, Cpower probably has a demand-side management program that you're likely to be able to participate in and earn revenue or lower your energy costs. And so when we talk a little bit about who we serve, we actually serve all of the major verticals that are seen here. There's very few that we actually don't serve in this sector. And we generally categorize our customers into these 6 segments with, commercial, including big box retail, data centers, commercial real estate, industrial, including large and small manufacturing, chemicals and aggregates, pharma, oil and gas, water pumping and wastewater management, as well as pretty much everything that falls in between the cracks there. And at the government level, we have state, local, and federal buildings and contracts, military installations, and municipalities. And we also cover all aspects of healthcare in the private and public sector, from clinics to labs to large state hospitals. And education, we run the gambit there, both private and public, everything from K-12 all the way up to Ivy League and major universities across the US. So I would like to grab our friend. Well, before we move on to kind of introducing to Demand Side Management 101, it is worth kind of noting, going back to our previous slide, is that another important sector for us, and maybe sector isn't the right word, is our energy brokers, consultants, project developers, and service providers. We tailor a lot of these conversations to the end user, but we understand that what we offer is actually a real value add to their service offerings. And it's important to note that unlike many competitors, Cpower only does demand-side energy management, which means we never compete on supply contracts. We never compete on unrelated hardware or otherwise. So we have a lot of great partnerships with many of the service providers that I mentioned that use Cpower to add value to their end customers. So what I want to do at this point to introduce this and to give myself a little bit of rest. And even though I'm sure you're enjoying my Florida, North Carolina accent combination here, I wanted to have Paul play a video and introduce really Demand Side 101 for you folks that maybe are not familiar with it. And it's a short video and it'll introduce some of our other team members. So Paul, if you want to take it away.
Welcome to Demand Side Energy Management 101, Cpower's online learning center where you can learn the fundamentals of demand side energy management from our team of energy experts through videos like this one.
Let's jump right in by answering the question, what is demand side energy management?
Demand side energy management is simply defined as the modification of consumer demand for energy.
Most of the time, demand-side energy management involves strategies designed to cut back or curtail the amount of energy facilities like yours use for any number of reasons, like saving money, reducing air pollution, cutting your facility's carbon footprint, and even earning revenue.
So why is it called demand side energy management?
To answer that question, let's take a basic look at how energy typically travels from its source of generation to your facility.
The energy your organization uses is generated at a power plant and travels along transmission lines until it reaches your utility. Then, it travels along distribution lines to your facility, where it's ultimately consumed by your organization.
Your facility has a meter that monitors how much energy your organization consumes. Your meter is the imaginary dividing line between the demand side and the supply side of energy.
The demand side of energy is often referred to as behind the meter. Behind the meter energy management includes all the ways you control and use energy.
This is the side of energy management equation that Cpower specializes in.
We're a demand side energy management company that helps organizations like yours save and earn money by optimizing and monetizing your existing behind the meter energy assets.
So now that you know what demand side energy management is, let's introduce its three main types of programs.
Demand response programs pay organizations to reduce energy load during times of grid stress or high energy prices.
Demand management programs help an organization's bottom line and the grid by improving how and when it uses energy.
And distributed energy resources consist of smaller power sources like battery storage, solar, and on-site generation that can be aggregated to provide power necessary to help meet your organization's regular demand for electricity otherwise required from the grid.
Each of these demand-side solutions presents an opportunity for organizations like yours to earn or save money by leveraging your existing energy assets.
Cpower can help you make it happen.
Cpower's Demand Side Energy Management 101 has more videos like this that walk you through the basics and details of each demand side category. So take a few minutes to learn how each could help your organization. And if you have any questions or are ready to get started with demand side energy management, give us a call or click the Get Started button, and one of our Cpower energy experts who's intimately familiar with your state and energy market will help start you on your journey to optimize demand-side energy management.
So I'd love to tell you we could just wrap there. Those guys did a great job of introducing the markets and programs. And as we're pulling up the slides, obviously that's a little bit of a commercial advertisement there, but wanted to do a little bit of level setting just to establish what some of the programs we're going to talk about today are and how to dive into those a little bit deeper. So let's first start with demand response as our first item. And when we talk about demand response, we're talking about programs that are designed to support grid reliability and exist to counter emergency scenarios which are triggered by weather or other emergency events, or they also exist to keep the prices of electrical energy down. So these programs have both emergency and economic triggers, or the reason they're activated. This is often called a dispatch. These programs are the earning or revenue side of demand side management as they pay you for reducing demand. Generally, capacity programs are emergency triggered and economic are price triggered, while ancillary can be a little bit of both. And as the chart shows, an event or a dispatch is triggered when needed. This is usually notified by a day ahead, day of, or in the case of some faster response programs, up to 10 minutes before an event. Customers curtail, activate generators or other distributed generation assets, and they lower demand from the grid until the event ends, which is communicated to the end user or the person controlling their demand. And then they are notified to restore their load. The availability and length of demand reduction can vary greatly by program, and we'd be happy to provide you more detail on your market and program options based on your needs. The next program we want to talk about is demand management. And this is most commonly known as peak demand management or cap tag management. And this is all about reducing system level peaks. In some cases, these peak demand days can correspond with a demand response event, but not always. These programs are the earning side of the equation, as the benefits are realized as on-bill savings, as a reduction in your capacity charge, which can make up to 30% of your electrical utility charges. The peak charges are assessed on the prior year's demand and are reflected on the current year's bill. Every market has ways that they calculate systems peaks, but almost all of them have a program to reduce the peak charge. In the scenario shown here, which looks a lot like the model used in Texas, the 4 highest peak days in the summer average out to determine the peak charge for the consumer, seen on the green line. The yellow line is the customer load or demand during the same time. The red dotted line shows what the normal peak demand would have been for the customer. Because this customer successfully dropped their peaks on the peak days, their average of those peak days would determine how their facility's peak charge would be assessed. They would be charged accordingly on the next year's bill. So the more accurate and significantly you can manage down the peaks, the lower the demand charge will be. The last program I should say here that we're going to talk about is energy efficiency. And technically, energy efficiency is a form of demand management, but Cpower is somewhat unique in our capacity to maximize the value of energy efficiency projects. Most customers undergo EE projects for 2 reasons. They want to lower their energy cost, or they want to achieve some level of clean energy or sustainability goals, in some cases both. But an often unknown or overlooked benefit to these projects is the ability to correspond with a revenue stream in addition to the energy cost savings. In both the PJM and New England markets we showed earlier, Cpower can take an existing energy efficiency project, complete the measurement and verification process and requirements on your behalf, and enroll the project into a capacity market. Once enrolled, these projects can create a revenue stream similar to the capacity value of a KW in a demand response program. In PJM, projects pay out 4 years from the completion date of the project, and in New England, up to 20 years. Certain utilities have different rules around who owns the capacity rights, but we are happy to give you more details if you have an EE project in any of these markets. The key takeaway is this is very easy money. There are other than supplying the paperwork, you don't really need to do anything else. Cpower enrolls the project, you get paid, and there's no curtailment or activation of assets required. And very briefly, we'll talk about distributed energy resources. DERs are not a program, but they are the energy resources that can provide power supply close to the source of consumption. These include all of your energy assets, from actually turning off the lights or curtailment to energy storage to solar to wind to CHPs and more. The key takeaway here is that if you have distributed energy resources or distributed generation that can be curtailed, dispatched, or activated as a part of your demand response strategy, they can generally be used in participation in demand-side management programs. There are permitting, regulatory, and tariff nuances where Cpower specializes that need to be considered. But speaking generally, if you have these assets, you have the potential to use them to participate in any of these programs. So why do these programs exist? For the utilities and ISOs, the answers are simple. We covered a little bit of this earlier, and that is the first one is grid reliability. And some of the more specific reasons regarding grid reliability can be seen here. But second, they help the utilities defer infrastructure cost and therefore keep the cost of electricity lower than it could be. It costs a lot of money to build and maintain a generation facility that may only run for a few hours a year. So how do you avoid building that? You reduce demand. And last, but increasingly a more important reason, is the clean and renewable power push. In some markets, up to half or more of the traditional coal, oil, or nuclear generation plants have been replaced with natural gas, wind, and solar. We'll talk more about this in just a second, but the key takeaway is that renewables have a potential for intermittency, which creates a greater need for customers to be available with their energy resources when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. So why do these programs exist for customers or consumers? Number 1 and number 2 often carry equal weight and are interchangeable, but grid reliability is critical for all energy consumers. Participation supports the grid's ability to maintain reliability. If there's a brownout or a blackout, it really doesn't matter how important what you make or what you do is. The operation or whatever you're doing could be significantly disrupted. And second is revenue and savings opportunities. This is a major driver for many customers who see participation yield hundreds to hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue and savings each year by participating. And resilience actually highlights distributed generation benefits. The ability to bounce back in an emergency can be validated by participation in a demand response test by confirming that your backup assets are operational and effective before an actual emergency or disruption occurs. And lastly, but maybe not least, sustainability goals. Every megawatt that is removed from the grid is 1 megawatt that does not need to be generated, which results in many cases as a net reduction in CO2 carbon emissions. For example, in the summer of 2020, Cpower customers in New York removed 1,200 tons of CO2 emissions from their participation in New York programs. And we'll quickly talk about this slide to emphasize 2 points. Demand is flattening. In most markets, demand is not going up, and that's due to slowing population rates and increasing energy efficiency and the proliferation of behind-the-meter solar, storage, and other renewables. But this image doesn't tell the full story. Most markets are quickly replacing the traditional coal, oil, and nuclear generation in favor of natural gas and renewables, which will continue to introduce an increased potential for intermittency and disruption. And the punchline is, if you hear that demand response is going away or it is not necessary anymore, please recall this slide, and let's talk about some very recent and specific examples on the next slide to underscore the point and the importance of participation. So why does it matter? There's a lot going on this slide and a lot intentionally not included because of the time we have. But the point to make here is that yes, demand response and demand management can help you make a nice chunk of money, but they also provide a very real solution to modern grid challenges. We can look no further than California. In 2020, wildfires and continued late-day peak shifts met an unprecedented heat wave. The state relied heavily on its demand response resources and participants to prevent what could have been a catastrophic grid reliability issue. Yes, there were some interruptions, but these were significantly mitigated thanks to the demand response participants' diligence. In 2019, and the best example of renewable intermittency can be seen in ERCOT, when two record heat days were met with lower than normal wind expectations. ERCOT relies on more than 20% of its fuel from wind. The ISO called upon its demand response resources, as well as other resources, to reduce the demand on the grid during these days. It worked perfectly in a market that has small reserves and some of the lowest cost energy in the US. And this is thanks in part to its dependency on its demand response participants. In 2014, many of you may recall that PJM was hit hard by a polar vortex. In spite of having a voluntary only program at the time during the winter, these voluntary demand response resources showed up and met the spiking demand and supply interruptions. Thanks in part to this effort, sub-zero temperatures stayed on the streets and didn't make their way into residential homes because heat and power was not interrupted for the most of the grid. In the summer of New York City this year, shifting load profiles across different grid service areas were seen as a result of the COVID impact. Simply put, many people were working from home and not in the office. This created zonal demand issues the grid was not used to. Demand response participants showed up and helped balance these shifting results, and they prevented power outages from abnormal and excessive zonal demand. In 2016 and 2018, in ISO New England, 2 power plants, Millstone and Mystic, respectively, were tripped offline. DR participants were called to help, and the result, no surprises here, they were able to get the plants back online without disruption to the overall power grid. The key takeaway, again, the money is great, the savings are great, but the fact that what you can do may actually prevent a catastrophe could be considered by some as heroic. So let's recap quickly. Participation can result in hundreds to hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings and earning with minimal disruption to your business. You're actively supporting a healthier, cleaner, and more reliable energy grid, and you're contributing to your own sustainability goals' success by participating in these programs. So what I'm hoping for at this point is that many of you are thinking, this sounds great, and how do I learn more? Here's a few guidelines to consider if you're thinking about demand response or demand side management participation. Do you have or represent a facility in one of the markets or utility areas that we serve? Are you a commercial or industrial organization? Do you have 100 kW of load or more that you could curtail or offset with a distributed generation asset? Could you participate in at least one test per performance season for at least 1 hour? And do you have a desire to lower your energy costs, earn revenue, promote reliability, and be a good corporate citizen? If you answered yes to any of these questions, please contact us at the conclusion of this session for a free assessment of your facility, operations, and your energy goals to see if you're able to participate, or if you are participating, to find out if there are additional opportunities for you to save and earn. So, as promised, your free gift. At this time, Paul's going to drop a link to our free gift. This is the 2020 State of Demand Side Energy Management ebook. This book is written each year by our energy experts and shared with our customers and prospective customers as an end-to-end review of all things energy management in the markets we serve. The insights and information, we hope, will help guide you on your path to energy success. So, Lori, with that, I think we're ready to move on to the questions.
Great, thanks, Joe. And again, if you'd like to ask Joe a question, just navigate to the bottom of your screen and type in your question. Where did you get the CO2 reduction numbers for New York?
Oh, great question. So recently in this year, Cpower has partnered with a not-for-profit organization that consults with utilities and other energy and emissions groups that calculates the actual impact of demand response participation. So, this was a fairly busy summer in New York as it pertains to demand response, and they were actually able to calculate based on what the curtailment was and what assets were used, what the actual carbon offset was, CO2 carbon offset was, as a result of participating in the programs in our greater New York market. So it's a valid and validated third-party, not-for-profit organization that we partner with for data and statistics like this.
Great, thank you. Also, how do I know if I can participate with a backup generator?
So this is a pretty complicated question and probably not one that can be answered in 30 seconds to a minute. But the answer is, generally speaking, California demand response participation with generators is pretty much out. And you just can't really use them there. And some markets like Texas, it's a lot easier to participate with them. And then, sitting in the middle of the road, New York, New England, at the end of the day, what it comes down to in all markets except for California is the generator permitted? And if you are not sure, this is something that Cpower specializes in. We've done thousands of generator assessments and permits. And a lot of times, people have been told we can't participate with this generator, but the fact of the matter is, it's always worth a second look, because sometimes it can simply be a permitting issue. There might be some minor upgrades, but we're also able to provide an ROI analysis that says you could upgrade this generator and get it demand response ready for X amount of dollars. But if you enroll that generator in demand response programs, you could earn Y. And if there's a net benefit there, a lot of people have taken action to get that generator in the market.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. And then any final thoughts for the audience?
No, I wish that we had one or two products that made this just very easy to go in and talk through, but we have many. And oftentimes, we have different industries and different verticals that need to do different things. Hospitals and data centers can't shut things down, and they say, well, I don't think I can participate. Give us a call. Non-critical load generators, things of that nature we can work with them. And, sure, you might not be able to do 40 megawatts, but usually you can participate in some degree, even if you have, critical or essential loads. So that would be my closing thought. Just reach out to us and let us know if you have any questions or get a free assessment.